Well, I'd like to welcome you to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. The one and only, Mr. Frazier Smith. How are you?
I'm good, Donnie. Good to see you.
C. Frazier Smith. One of my, I don't know if you know this, you've been one of my mentors. I've taken tidbits from you over the years. You got a new book.
Well, I do. Here Lies Jim Crow. It's based on all the people in Maryland who were involved in the civil rights movement before it actually was a movement.
Why'd you do it?
Well, I was just really impressed with some of the stuff that I learned while I was doing research for my book on William Donald Schaefer.
Like what?
Well, the story of Willie Adams and his effort to desegregate the golf courses in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Adams and some businessmen in the city had gone to Lily Mae Jackson and said, could you help us desegregate the golf courses? And she said, excuse me, we're trying to desegregate the schools. I think that's number one. And he said, well, do you mind if we borrow your lawyer? and her lawyer at the time was Charles Hamilton Houston, whose assistant was a young man named Thurgood Marshall. And they went to court over a period of 7 years, which is about the kind of thing that happened in Baltimore when people were trying to desegregate all sorts of institutions. And they finally won. But Adams thought he used to play golf with Joe Louis a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And Louis would say, why can't we play on the rest of the courses? There was only one course they could play on, and it only, at the time, was Carroll Park, and it only had 9 holes. And so Louis said, gee, Willie, why can't we play on the rest of the courses? So he decided to go to court and fix it, and they did. And it's typical of the kinds of things that had to happen, from the librarians at the Pratt, to the school department, to politics in Baltimore, across the board. Their struggles like this had to happen to desegregate the city and the state.
Well, 2010, where are we? I mean, particularly, we're just getting off of Dan Roderick's show. We're talking about the Barton Felder Kamenetz fight, in the county, the Jesse Bernstein fight here in the city. Where are we, 2010?
Well, if you look back over the last 20 years, when you and I have been looking at politics in Maryland and in Baltimore, we've come quite a ways. I mean, there was a time about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when all the presiding public officials in the city were black. They were all black women, and that's still the case. And the prosecutor is black, and we've appointed many more black judges than we had in those days, and the council I think is predominantly black. So attitudes probably maybe come along a little more slowly than actual visible progress, but it's happening. It's there. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about the Jesse Bernstein race for prosecutor. I mean, in some ways, you still have people voting against that history. They don't want to walk away from the gains that have been made. But eventually we're going to get to the point where people are going to say, my public safety matters too, and if I don't think that the black incumbent is doing the job that we need, then I'm going to be willing to vote for someone else.
In both races, I see people, and politics is very much, the campaign is often about the definition game. I see people, rather than saying what I'm going to do to help make things better, I'm busy tearing down my opponent. I don't really care for that approach. If all I can do to lift myself up is to tear you down, then have I brought any new ideas to the table?
Well, the whole political environment affects people in lots of ways that sometimes aren't very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
You try to break through the static and make people focus on who you are and what you're doing. I mean, Mrs. Jessamy, I think, has one of the best ideas that's out there. She wants to deal with young kids who she thinks don't get enough positive reinforcement in their lives. And so some of them end up doing things that they might not otherwise do. They don't see the alternatives. And so, she's got this program called Violence to Virtue that's got all of the churches in the city lined up to try to address the problems of young kids. Now maybe Greg Bernstein has the same set of ideas. I don't know. I mean, I think what he's basically saying is my job, if I get to be the prosecutor, is to prosecute.
Okay, can you understand that from my perspective as a black male in Baltimore City, that when I go down to the Mitchell courthouse and I see black male after black male after black male coming up out of that Mitchell courthouse, can you imagine how distraught I get? I don't know about others, but it's like, damn, is that all that's in the, are all of the criminals black and male? That's
Well,
honestly what I think. Like, wow, don't slip in Baltimore.
well, we know what the history is, but I mean, you know, the city is 70% black, so it makes sense that a lot of the defendants would be black. But you know, there's that whole issue of the differential prosecution for the kinds of drugs you're using. I mean, is that right? Should that be fixed? Why doesn't it get fixed? I mean, you know, there's been legislation, I think, nationally and maybe in Maryland too, to, you know, balance the punishment that's meted out to people depending on what drug it is that they're using. You know, and of course we don't ever get to the ultimate question is, would it be better if we figured out some other way to deal with the offense? And, you know, maybe the criminalizing of this problem in our society, is undeniable, I think, would be something else. But again, you know, people are afraid to do it politically. Look what happened to Kurt Schmoke.
He brought it up. He brought up decriminalization, and he was looked at like he was an alien. But yet on today's show, might have been Heidi who called in, that was the very topic. The you know, possible taking the criminal element, taking the penalty out of the use of drugs.
Well, it's something that hasn't been looked at adequately, because I mean, if you look at some of the countries in Europe where drugs have been decriminalized, there still are attendant problems. You know, there are places in Amsterdam, I think, where you can go and buy drugs legally, but in the neighborhoods where that goes on, there's lots of criminality and things that country's not happy with. So, I mean, it wouldn't be we wouldn't have to launch into that without knowing what some of the pitfalls are. But it's something that needs to be revisited. At least it needs to be discussed.
Let's do a commercial. Your writing, your radio, your book. Let's do a commercial for you. And thank you for joining us here.
What's the commercial going to say? That I'm
well, one is well, what do you do? Tell us about the book. Where can we get the book?
Well, the book is that you can get it on Amazon if you want to get it for less money, or you can get it at Barnes & Noble and get it at other bookstores around the neighborhood. You know, when I'm not writing books, I'm writing every Friday for the Daily Record, and I'm on the radio at WYPR 3 times a week on Inside Maryland Politics.
What time is that?
It's 6:04 and 8:04. If you're up that early, Donnie, but check it out.
Okay. Any word of encouragement or advice for aspiring journalists?
If you really want to do it, if it's what you think you love, go ahead. There are more opportunities than ever. I mean, the problem is that you need to find a way to make a living, because the old establishment newspapers are dying out. They may be able to hang on for a few more years, but it's going to be more difficult than ever to get a job there. But you know, the journalism schools I hear are teeming with people that want to do this. And, you know, what are they going to do? Go to Beijing and blog, or go somewhere? They want to be a foreign correspondent. They're being advised by reporters who used to be reporters, who know very well what the landscape is, but they're saying you can still do this. And I don't, you know, I think people are still very interested in writing and reporting, and by all means, go to your English class and learn how to write and learn how to think, and you'll do fine.
Good deal. The one and only Frazier Smith. We love and respect you and appreciate your sharing wisdom with me over the years. I thank you.
Thank you, Donnie.
Keep watching BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth.